And welcome everyone again to today's roundtable. We're very happy to have Mary Oishi with us. She's been a development director with a long time for different community radio stations. And she's also the Poet Laureate of Albuquerque, which is pretty cool. And she has a knack for fundraising. So I know we're all keen to hear what her strategy is there. So thank you, Mary, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much for waiting till my schedule had an opening.
No problem.
Sorry about that. But I'm happy to be here. Community radio is in my heart and always will be. And so I'm interested to hear, first of all, maybe some things that you want to hear about. Like, do you want to hear about how to identify major donors, how to get them on board, how to set up endowments, or what is it that you'd like to hear first? What's your most important thing?
One more, what are they looking for whenever a large contributor wants to or is thinking of contributing to a station, a community radio station?
I honestly think that when people have some wealth and they want to, when they're looking to do something with it, usually what they're looking for is like immortality, to be honest. They're looking for something that's going to live on past them, that's going to do some good, so that they can feel good about having amassed whatever they have, and that they can do maximum amount of good with it. And that's kind of why, some people are attracted to community radio, because they see what good it does in the community. And you want them to know that it's going to be there for the future, even when they're gone. And I think that's they never say that, but underneath, that's really their motivation. So if you understand that, it's a little easier to ask them, because you're doing them a favor. You're offering them the opportunity to live on. And I think that's a pretty big motivator for people who are wealthy. I think it's sometimes hard for small stations to identify who would be potential major donors, unless you have a membership database that has that feature where it will go through and you can actually find out everything about these people. It's about your membership, which I find a little scary. I was at a college station back east for about 1.5 years, and the college had the funds, and so they had this thing where they sent me, somebody only gave $25, but he had inherited a casket business from his grandfather and father. And they told me every club he was in college, every stock he owned, exactly how much money, all the real estate, where it was located. I mean, it was ridiculous. I felt like it was an invasion of his privacy, to be honest. And I never did follow up on that, because I thought if all he gave was $25, he wasn't that committed to the radio station. But they wanted me to go and do a big ask from him. I think it's better to get to people who are very involved with the station. Like your volunteers, don't overlook them. Sometimes there's volunteers who do have the means to help the station out more than with their time, although time is a wonderful gift, because there are no billionaires of time. We all have the same amount, basically. So if people are giving you their time, they're very committed to what you're doing. And sometimes we don't treat our volunteers as any kind of potential, but sometimes they are. The other thing you can do is start putting things in your membership newsletter. How many of you have membership newsletters, either print or digital? Okay, so some do, some don't. I guess I should change my view to gallery so I can see. So you can start putting things in your newsletter. Like if you have a development person who, or your station manager, who can write a letter in the newsletter, do a nice piece on how, you know, the station is like a family that lives from paycheck to paycheck, when you just barely making enough to keep yourself going, and you'd like to have a savings account, and you'd like to even have an IRA, basically. So to ensure the security of the station, that the station can go on through rough times and up times and down times. And you know, so that's one thing you can do to ask people to consider giving you a legacy gift or just a major donation. If it's in conjunction with a capital solicitation, like you have to raise capital for a new building or new equipment or something like that, then the best thing to do is first to go to someone silently, like a foundation, like the Land Foundation, or somebody who is kind of in your corner values wise, and ask for a donation that you can use as a challenge, that you can use to match, and say, we can draw down $10,000 if we can get $10,000 from our members. That's a good way to start it, kind of silently, get that big match, and then go to your membership to ask them for whatever they can to match those dollars. You can also put ads on the air, and especially if you get one person who tells you that you're in their will, have that person come on and say why it was important to them, and record it and play it. You know, play it in shows where, you know, you think that people will be lit, like during news programs or something like that, where you think it would be effective. And I did that when I got, there was a person who put us in their will for 10% of their estate, which amounted to a lot. And the woman was a doctor, and her husband was a speech therapist, and they had no children, and they put us in for 10%. And I had him, I asked him why, and I wrote it up in a kind of appealing way. And I asked if he would come in and record that. And then there was another man who put us in for $50,000. And he talked about how he and his wife didn't want to give us big amounts now because they didn't know if they would need it for their medical expenses and so on. But that after he was gone, they wanted to be sure that we had some funds to keep going. And both of those people recorded spots for our air, which then got more inquiries, you know, because we put my number at the end and people would contact me. So it brought in more. So if you can get one person, you know, use them to reach out to other people. So that's one thing.
I see that Davine has raised her hand for a question.
Oh, okay.
So back to the college where they had all the information, the kind of invasive information. Well, how did they get it?
You know,
so we can get that too.
There's a lot of those programs. In fact, like if you have Razor's Edge, I don't know if you've heard of that. The Razor's Edge is a pretty expensive membership program, but they have that module where they identify all the people and what they have the potential to give. They will tell you, now this person has the potential to give 2,000, this person has the potential to give 20,000. Although I looked myself up on that and it said I had the potential to give $1,200 and I absolutely did not. So, I mean, so I'm not sure how accurate it is, but, you know, I think that that's, there are programs like that. They're computer programs. I don't know how they do the research. I have no idea. But yeah, that is a way you can go. You know, it's funny because once we started all that publicizing that we were looking for legacy gifts, estate gifts, we had people give us, and they never even told us they were going to. And then we found out that they put us in as like charitable remainder, like they would give their estate to a relative, but then when that relative died, it was supposed to come to us, things like that. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that. The other thing that you can really look for is IRA charitable rollovers. For if you have members who are 70 and a half years old and up, you can do that because they have to give they have to have disbursements from their IRA when they're 70 and a half. So here's the advantages for them. It's an easy and convenient way to make a gift from one of their major assets. So say they have a whole lot of stock in there and it's appreciated a heck of a lot. If they had to take that out for themselves, it would be part of their gross income for the year, but it excludes it from their gross income if they donate it to you. So it's like a tax-free rollover. It counts toward their required minimum distribution. So those are some advantages of giving a gift from their IRA, but this is for people 70 and a half or older. So to qualify, they must be that age or older. The transfer must go directly from their IRA custodian to your station as a 501c3, and it can't exceed $100,000. So, you know, it is something that you can also make your listeners aware of if you think you have some listeners who are over 70 years old. Yes.
Yeah, Bear.
Yeah. So is that when someone turns, 70 and a half years old, is that every year after that, or is it just in that one frame of time?
I'm not sure if it's every year.
Okay.
I know that.
Yes, it's annual.
Yeah, I kind of
Annual?
thought so. Yeah. So that's something that you can tout, like in your newsletter. You could take an ad. Are you 70 and a half? Need to do your IRA distribution, consider giving it to KMUD, so yeah. And so that's one good thing. Another thing that I would do is have set up some kind of catchy things like $1 a day club, where people who give you $30 a month, they become $1 a day club members. Or and I actually do. I know some people, they'd rather just cut you one check at the end of the year or something. But most people do budget monthly. So one of the ways that I upped KUNM's budget when I was the development director there was to switch. Almost all of the pitching went to monthly, because I'd say to people, how much do you pay on your car in a year? And nobody could tell me. But if I said, what's your monthly car payment? Everybody knew. If I said, what's your mortgage? What's your rent? Everybody knew. The monthly amount. What do you pay for cable TV? Everybody knew if they had cable TV, right? So everything people budget on a monthly basis. So gear your fundraising to monthly. Just $10 a month, just $5 a month, just $30 a month. So we got a lot of people in the $1 a day club by giving it to them at $30 a month. And then we would do some special thing for the $1 a day club people. This was at KVNF in Colorado. We would have a winery donate wine, and we would have like a bed and breakfast or something, trade us for the use of their patio or whatever, or we would have this little wine and cheese and have, meet the board and meet the various popular program hosts and things like that. And people would come together and have this event, and we had like a little jazz combo, play. And one time we had what do you call those grants for equipment? I can't remember the name now, from the federal government. Anyway, we had to raise $9,000 locally, and we were almost out of time. And I had just become a development director not long before that. So they said, hey, you have to hurry up and raise $9,000. And so we had one of those wine and cheeses for the $1 a day club. And I did a little asking around, since it was a small community, about the people in it. So I got some sense. And one of the donors was a retired real estate lawyer who retired in that area. And his wife was a gallery owner in Aspen. And she had just taken this eligible bachelor off the market. And so people were angry at her because she took him out of circulation. So I made it a point to sit right next to her and become, strike up a conversation, kind of get to know her a little bit. And surprisingly, she had a kind of hard life for, a wealthy woman. I was like, wow. And so anyway, I think he was so gratified that I was nice to his wife that he was the first one to write the check, and I said, we need $9,000 by the time we leave here so that we can, and he pulled out his checkbook and wrote the first 1,000. And then of course that got, other people to follow suit. So I think it's, a lot of it is relationship building. You can't just raise money from people just because you need it. I think people really, there's so few connections anymore that if you go out of your way to make a real human connection with people, it really is, it really helps you then when you go for an ask. Because they don't see you just as somebody with your hand out. They see you as somebody who takes an interest in them as a human being. And, I hope that didn't sound too like sales-like, but I really did get to really like that person. I enjoyed the conversation with her, and I got to know her better as time went on. And then she donated some great things for our auction. We had an art auction, and she donated some incredible things. And Joe Cocker's wife came to it and bought thousands of dollars worth of stuff. It was great. But anyway, so that's one of the things, is like, do something like that. $1 a day club is a good thing. The other thing you can do, I don't know if you do this at your station, and I know it's a big thing at NPR stations, but I figure they stole pledge drives from Pacifica, so we can steal some of their ideas right back. And one of them is day sponsors. And I started that at KUNM, and it brought in quite a bit. And that's where we would charge for the person to have. Are you familiar with that concept, where throughout the day they get announcements, like say maybe 6 a day in the morning, and you give them different time slots where they get an announcement just one day, and it has to be personal, not a business. And it would be, today's day sponsor is Mary Oishi, and she's saluting, saying happy birthday to her daughter who was born today, or it's for anniversaries, birthdays, and it can be in honor of someone who has passed on, like in memoriam on their birthday or their day they passed, or on Mother's Day. It can be, like I said, anniversaries. Like sometimes the children go together and buy one for their parents for their anniversary. It can be, for the person who has everything. This is how I build it. If your husband or your wife or your whatever has everything, this is something that they wouldn't buy for themselves. So you can, surprise them by having a happy birthday on the air 6 times a day, and charge enough for it that it seems like, this is something really special. I think we charge $360 for it. So like $30 a month. Of course, our station had like 100,000 listeners. So I think you should scale it to whatever your you think your area will bear. And after people start hearing that, then they want to do it too. You can also use it for retirements, you know, and I would just send out a form. If people said that's what they wanted as their premium, I would send out a form that had a template that they could say, this is so-and-so from this town. That's another thing. If you can say your town, then if you cover more than one town, you know, people can say where they're from, and then who they're honoring and why they're honoring them. So we did it for, it was retirements. That was not very often. It was usually anniversaries, birthdays, and once in a while an honoring like a memorial in memory of someone. But the main thing was birthdays and anniversaries. That was a big deal. And, you know, you can, sometimes you can, you know, it starts out slow, but you can stack it up. And then you have the name of the person, and you even know when like their anniversary is. So you get a little bit of personal information that you can use. And once you identify a major donor, you know, keep building the relationship, because they can always change their will, you know, if they feel like you've forgotten them. One of the things people can't stand is to be invisible. People, and they don't like this very kind of cold world where everything's a number, and you know, you call somewhere and you have to, you know, punch everything in on your phone instead of actually talking to a human being. So I think it's really important to build human relationships with people. So that's one of the things. The other thing you can do is, like, if you get some free tickets to events, don't give them all to the volunteers, you know, give some to the volunteers. Always save out, if you have a major donor, save one out. We used to get tickets to the Santa Fe International Folk Art Market, and people loved those. And so we would give some to volunteers, you know, we get quite a few of them. So we give some to volunteers, and then we give some, you know, hold out a few for major donors. So that's another way to let them know you haven't forgotten about them throughout the year. The other thing you can do is put on ads on the air, not ads, announcements that say you're looking for challenge grants, because people tend to give more if they get their donation matched. So say we're looking for challenge grants. So if you were planning to give, say, $200 or more, call me directly and we'll make it a challenge grant. And some people will do that, and that helps you to identify potential major donors as well. If they're willing to give you, you know, sometimes they'll give you $500 or $1,000, you know. So that's another good thing to do to get, to identify major donors. Let's see. The other thing that I think is good to do is to build a relationship with a socially responsible investment advisor, because they're going to tend to have clients who are you know, more, their values are more in line with what we're doing. And so if you can kind of get to know one of those, or something like that. I think that we had a member who was also an investment advisor, but she specialized in socially responsible investing. And so she was willing to work with us on all kinds of things, like setting up charitable remainder trusts for us. You know, if somebody wanted to give everything in their, say, a particular fund that they had of stock or cash, or real estate even, but they wanted it to be that they continued to collect from it while they were alive, and then when they die, the rest, you know, then when they die, it would all be come to the station. And charitable remainder trusts are a really wonderful way that people can give you the money, give you the stock, whatever it is, and not and still benefit from it while they're alive, but you own it. And as soon as they pass, then it's yours. And so the advisors can give them the way that they can do a life insurance policy that will take care of their offspring, and you still get, you know, and they get all the tax benefits of giving you, say they bought some kind of stock way back when it was almost nothing, and it's split and you know, it's gone way up, then they don't have to pay taxes on that. Their children don't have to pay taxes on it. And it's a way that they can benefit the station and still draw from it while they're alive. So that's a good thing to do too. Let's see, if you're at a college, it's easy. You can do a college. The college usually has a foundation, and there people will help you with any of the kind of endowments that you do. If you don't, you can go to your local community foundation, and they will, you know, and talk to them about setting up a fund there that is for your station. And so that if there's, say, like they give a whole bunch of stock, you know, that the foundation would sell it and put the proceeds in your account. So, you know, because it's really hard, because they will have a broker who does that. And if it's just you know, what are you going to do? Like, you know, it's hard for the station to sell things like that. Let's see. The other thing is the vehicle donation program. If you have that, every once in a while, somebody will give you like a great big RV, or they'll give you a classic car. Like we got a 64 Mustang once, we got a 56 Chevy, and we got I think it was a 54 Cadillac. Or maybe it was a 60 something Cadillac. It was a great big thing. It looked like a land yacht. It was this enormous Cadillac. And the car donation place allowed us to have a local auctioneer come and sell it right outside the station, rather than them selling it. And one time they put that on eBay when it was the Mustang. And it ended up being the parking lot where we parked it. That guy bought it because he liked it so much when he saw it. But anyway, that's another way to identify major donors, both the person who's donated and the person who buys it. So that's another thing. And I really think that one of the best things is to keep following up. If somebody inquires about it, follow up as fast as you can, and keep in touch with people. You know, maybe give yourself a calendar note that every so many months, you know, maybe don't let more than 6 months go by before you at least drop them a quick line, like happy birthday or whatever it is, to make sure that, you know, that you keep that channel open and people feel seen, and, you know, that you actually build a relationship with the person. So is there any questions so far, or things that I haven't covered that you'd like me to? Oh my goodness. I certainly didn't want to silence you all.
Oh, I see Davine again as a thought.
So we have a community foundation organization here. Not quite sure how to approach them. Do you have any suggestions
Well,
for developing a relationship with them?
yeah, I would just give them a call and say that you'd like to just sit down and explore the possibility of having an endowment at the foundation that you can route legacy gifts, estate gifts through. See if they would help you just, you know, set one up there. Just that you'd like to explore that as a possibility, you know. And the other thing is that you can make presentations to like estate planning attorneys. You know, if you can get them together in one room, you can talk about that as well, like the advantages of giving to your station. And, you know, that's a possibility. I thought of doing that, but I never did it, to be honest. But that is a possibility. Does that seem plausible, what I said about, you know, because I've always been places where, you know, we just you know, the two of the three stations I was at were affiliated with a college. So I used the college foundation.
Mhm.
But I wanted to have a reserve fund because when I first came to KUNM, they were 75,000 in the red, and they would borrow from the university every year. And the university said, this has got to stop. Like, you have to. So from November to the end of June, I cleaned that up, and we were in the black at the end of the fiscal year. And then I said, okay, we don't want to live from paycheck to paycheck. We want to have a reserve fund. And so by the time I left there, I was there for 17 years, I guess. By the time I left there, we had $100,000 reserve fund. We had built our annual budget. It was over twice what it was when I got there. I think it was 1.7 million. When I left, it was 3 million. And then we also did an endowment. I promised the station manager I would have $1 million in people's, you know, and it committed to the endowment, and I did. But I had the advantage of having, you know, the university's foundation with their materials about charitable remainder trusts and all that sort of thing. So I could meet with the potential donor with someone from the foundation, which was helpful because they had all kinds of answers about financial things that I didn't know. So if you can work with your local community foundation, that would be helpful for the endowment. But the endowment, you don't ever touch the principal, you just get the interest every year. So it has to be pretty sizable to be worth anything to the station.
Right.
But the reserve fund you can dip into. And that can just be part of your own bank account. I see someone's hand up from Caitlin.
Yeah, thank you. So Mary, once we have a list of past major donors and potential major donors assembled, I'm going to ask you in a second what you think is the best way to approach people, but clearly from what you've said already and what we know, that's going to be different with each person depending on the relationship that already exists.
Mhm.
But if there's no, like, you know, clue already, what's your sense of what's a good way to make that approach?
Well, I think a good way is probably to first do an event around a specific need that you have. Like, suppose you need to replace the console, you know, the board. Okay, that's a pretty expensive proposition. And, you know, if you want to do something like that, or you want to digitize your entire music library and you need a huge server to do that or something. I mean, I think that, you know, you can have an event around that specific thing, you know, and you can say, you know, we're going to go on air with this, but first we want to come to you and see if we can get a good sizable matching money, so that, you know, if we can raise $10,000 from this room, then we can go to the rest of the membership, and that will turn into 20,000 when we go to the rest of the membership, because they're going to know that their $20 is going to be $40, or their $100 is going to be $200 for us because of your match. So if you'd be willing, you know, if everybody in this room gives $500 toward this, we'll have a match of this amount, you know? Yeah.
Thanks.
You have another question?
No, she's just waving.
No, I'm waving at Ursula.
Oh, you're waving.
Sorry.
Ursula
has a
left her
question.
chair. She came over to reinforce you, Stephanie.
That was great, Mary. Thank you.
Mary, I was interested in your story about going from being in the red to, you know, increasing everything, really.
Mhm.
What do you think? What do you think was one of the big? I mean, obviously something changed.
Well, one of the things that I did was our previous development director just handed everybody a big packet, and I had in-person trainings for the volunteers, and I had really colorful handouts, and I talked to them about my philosophy of, first I asked them, how much do you pay for your car payment in the whole year? How much do you pay? And they go, I don't know, how much do you pay for quick? How much do you pay for your rent? How much do you pay for your mortgage? And so then that demonstrated to them the absolute necessity to switch to monthly. Don't say give us $100, say give us $10 a month. That's $120 for the year, right? So we had everything, we moved everything to monthly. The other thing I did was have prizes. So every day we had a prize, and they had never done that before. I solicited it from local businesses, and then we had a grand prize at the end of the week. So the earlier you gave, the more chances you had to win something. And of course, the law is that you can't require somebody to donate to enter. So we would put up a thing online where they could sign up for the thing for the prizes if they wanted to without giving, which some people did, but not many. Most people gave. And we went out to events like that we normally had booths at anyway with the prizes, so people could see what they were. And so, that's what we did for probably the first, the two pledge drives that we had between then and the end of that fiscal year. We had prizes every day and a grand prize. So that incentivized people. I know, like, we raised so much money. Oh, and I sent letters ahead of time with a full color flyer showing all the prizes. And we took in 25,000 the first weekend, and Richard was scared. He was like, we're not going to get any more donations. You got all these already, I said, yes, we are. And we ended up getting like 350,000 in one pledge drive, which blew his mind. And so, it's like, and this state is very much like a third world nation. I mean, it's like, or developing nation, I guess it's called now, because there's very wealthy people here, like in Santa Fe and certain areas of New Mexico. And then there's very, very poor people, So, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a whole huge middle class here. It's either very wealthy or very poor. And so it's like the second poorest state in the nation, although there's certain areas like Los Alamos that have some of the highest per capita income in the country. So, it's just really a kind of dichotomy there. But one of the things that I would say is, give for people who can't give, because there really are people who can't, but they still need what this station has to offer. And so if you've been doing well, this is your chance to do some good and help your community. And so, I appealed from a self-interest point of view because they could win this thing, something like a nice futon or a beautiful bike or whatever. But they also, were doing something that was altruistic and just a good thing to do from their heart. So, kind of having that twofold approach, I think was helpful.
So conceptually, what do you think was the basis of your success? Like, what were conceptually, what did you formulate for yourself to kind of go in that direction?
Well, first of all, I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in community radio down to the marrow of my bones. So that was pretty easy. And I think if I believe in something, I'm willing to work for it. And also, I guess I have that kind of, maybe it's a Japanese mentality that if you can conceive it, you can manifest it, So, I would just say, this is my goal. This is what I'm going to do. And I think that's part of it. The other thing was the strategy of what I would do is have nonprofits. That was the other thing I changed. I would have nonprofits come in and answer the phones, and then they could take nonprofit announcements. We would give them a certificate that they could take nonprofit announcements. But what that also did was it had the nonprofits, tell all their friends oh, we're going to be staffing the phone on this particular day. I mean, so some of them were big organizations like the Office of the Aging for New Mexico, and they would fill up, you know, a whole day's worth of shifts. But it would also be smaller nonprofits, you know, like immigrant rights people, and, you know, all sorts of organizations that would come in and answer the phones. And then, of course, we would say, or the Black Student Union, you know, and we would say, hey, on this jazz show, we have the Black Student Union back there answering the phones, you know, so call in, talk to one of these brilliant students, whatever. And I think it created that much more sense of community, plus it kept the nonprofits involved in the station, and we would encourage them to tell people on their list when it was going to be their turn to be taking a shift. And usually the next pledge drive, they would take even more, you know, and so that was kind of interesting and was a way to get a whole lot more people involved. One time I had done a blues show on the criminal justice system. So they were all songs about going to prison and being accused of murder when I never harmed a man, that kind of thing. And the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association liked it so much, they came in and answered phones the next pledge drive. So, you know, things like that, where you can kind of develop this natural affinity for different nonprofit organizations. So,
Mary, what would you say that you've learned that one should never do with large donors?
should never do. Oh, that's interesting. I never thought of that. Well, certainly don't just once you have them in, don't forget about them. I think, you know, don't take them for granted, because like I said, people can change their will. I've done it myself because, you know, they get grandchildren, like in my case, or, you know, something happens where they lose faith with an organization they've been with, that they have in their will. And so you don't want to be that organization. You want to make sure that you maintain your relationship and build it as much as you can. And another thing you never do is air your dirty laundry to them. If there's bad politics going on in the radio station, do not sit and mull that over with your major donors. That doesn't work. If they get some kind of a negative taste in their mouth, they're not going to give anymore. So that's another thing. I mean, as tempting as it can be, especially if you've built a pretty reasonable relationship. I'm still friends with, I've retired from KUNM 3 years ago. I'm still friends with one of the major donors. Well, two of the major donors. One of them left town and kept us in their will anyway. And when she comes back for the folk art market every year, we meet for lunch. And one time she even bought me something from the folk art market. So, you know, it's like, keep the relationship going. Don't air dirty laundry. And I know we tend to forget about that, but that's really important.
So I have a bunch of other questions, unless other people do.
You should sit here, I'll move back.
Okay.
I have two more things I'm curious about. One is kind of in reference to what you just said, when you kind of implied that, and I've experienced this, that in some ways major donor relationships are also personal relationships.
Yeah.
And based on some level of friendship or feeling of affinity for somebody. So for instance, when you left KUNM, how does one transfer those relations over to the new, just to somewhere else when the person with the relationship leaves? Like how is that, managing that kind of personal level of the relationship?
Well, I continued to be friends with, like I said, one of the people, because we had a lot in common. He was a manager for blues bands and everything. So, you know, we were we had a lot in common, you know, outside of the radio station. So we've remained friends. But for everybody else, you know, I just told them who was coming, who was going to replace me, and how wonderful she was, and that they were going to really enjoy working with her. I mean, you have to, you know, just keep everything positive, you know.
So then
And
what did she have to do to kind of catch that?
well, I left her a whole book. I left her a notebook about that thick with all sorts of advice on, you know, how to handle this, that, and the other. And I went down through all the major donors and told her a lot about them personally. And I told her, you know, please maintain, these people want this, and they prefer this. These people prefer jazz tickets. These people prefer, you know, that you go to a barbecue at their house, whatever, you know. And so I just gave her all the inside scoop that I could on each person, each one that was a legacy donor, and, you know, what my history with them was, and what, you know, I recommended that she do to maintain the relationship. So I handed it off, tried to do it as smoothly as possible.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is the issue of recognition. In my experience, some people, you know, when it comes to maybe a letterhead that shows donors, or some sort of printed or on air, but mostly I'm thinking printed ways to acknowledge donors. I've experienced both the people being mad because they weren't acknowledged, and people being mad because they didn't want their name public, because they didn't want other people coming to them for money. So I'm just curious how you know, handle that or negotiate that so that you get it right with people.
Well, we had quite a few legacy donors, and not all of them wanted to go on the air with an announcement, you know, telling why they did what they did. So I only had 2 out of all of the people who donated, or who put us in their will, for who were willing to do that. And but I think, you know, you can also do like a member spotlight, and spotlight the major donors, but you ask them first, would you like to be, you know, how would you like to, would you agree to an interview, you know, and your picture taken and put in the membership newsletter, you know. And if they say no, you know, that's fine. You know, you just say, oh, then you make a note, this person doesn't want the publicity. But if they say yes, then they do. I mean, you know.
You ask them that when they make their first donation.
I don't think I do immediately. I just get back to them and say, oh, based on our discussion, I think you'd be great to, you know, go on the air. Would that interest you at all? You know, to go on the air and say, you know, why you put us in your will. You know, it's just a simple matter of the respect of a question. You know, ask them the question, and then they can tell you, yes, I want publicity. No, I don't. You know, just like you say, you know, you say to people, if you want to remain anonymous, we won't announce your name on the air, you know. But if you want us to, we'll happily say your name, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, people are leaving. They expected it to be an hour. So it was great to see people from KMUD. I remember meeting a bunch of people from there at the NFCB conference and the Grassroots conference. So
Yeah.
and nice meeting the rest of you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. This was wonderful. And
I hope it was helpful.
It is.
absolutely.
Yeah. Totally helpful. Thank you, Mary. And, I remember at one of the conferences, you talked a lot about getting in with the car donations and how much you raised at KUNM and how inspiring that was. And, I was just looking at what K-Mud's brought in so far this year, and we're like well over $6,000. And I think we budgeted 12,000. And God knows there's lots of dead cars in the hills of Humboldt County. So
Great. Good
Yeah.
for you.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So
Yeah,
thank you.
Mary. Yeah, we also saw that presentation you did in Ames, and it was wonderful. And about the car donations, and we signed up right away, and we've made thousands of dollars off it now. So thanks to you
Awesome.
for that. You've really helped our radio station a lot. We really appreciate it. And Bear, you did a great presentation also about fund drives. So
Yeah.
lots
Right.
of great information from this crew here, and great to see you all again. And Mary, this has been really helpful. It definitely took a lot of really good notes. I'm sure I'll have more questions later. It'd be great to have you back sometime. You're just a wealth of knowledge. We really, really appreciate you being here. So thank you so much.
Sharon. I've been out of this loop for a while, so I was hoping I could still bring something worthwhile. Thank you.
Well, it was wonderful to have you, and thank you for sharing your time with us. We really enjoyed having you.